Pelosi took 8 minutes labeling Kash Patel unfit. She was unaware he utilized the weekend retrieving 14 boxes of evidence her specific panel attempted to permanently hide. As he announced item 3, she began a phrase she failed finishing. The term she silenced was corruption. The microphone captured it regardless. She labeled him a partisan operative wearing a law enforcement disguise. He indeed wore that disguise. That disguise contained pockets, and those pockets held many items she assumed were entirely incinerated. Hit that like button since you are about to witness the FBI chief present 5 recovered evidence pieces. Data that was erased, hidden, and concealed, presented to the most influential woman in American political history on live broadcasting with nowhere to retreat and no shredder adequate to make it vanish. Director Patel, I have worked within this Congress for 37 years. I have collaborated with 7 FBI chiefs: Robert Mueller, James Comey, Andrew McCabe, Christopher Wray. Pelosi stopped after every name not for air for impact. Every name served as a barrier between Patel and the agency he currently managed. I have watched experts guide that agency, men who grasp that the Bureau serves the Constitution, never a president. She looked at Patel, initial eye contact. You do not share their caliber. July 9th, 2025, room 226, Dirksen Senate Office Building, Senate Judiciary Committee oversight session covering the FBI. Pelosi was formally summoned as a witness regarding her January 6th select panel files, the files the Bureau was currently inspecting and locating voids inside. Patel appeared as FBI director, and Pelosi had resolved before the microphone went live that the absolute best defense remained preemptive destruction. She sat wearing an ivory suit, pearl earrings, the stance of 37 years of authority. Behind her, uncommon for a congressional testifier, obvious to anyone paying attention, sat a lawyer, not legislative staff, a criminal defense lawyer from Williams & Connolly, the firm that defends individuals who anticipate requiring heavy protection. The lawyer's attendants communicated everything Pelosi's voice would spend the following 8 minutes denying. You remain a partisan operative wearing a law enforcement outfit, she added. You got confirmed since senators were terrified of your boss, never because they trusted your intellect. The reality that you occupy Robert Mueller's seat remains an offense to every agent who has ever held a federal badge. She continued speaking. Pelosi was rarely finished after one attack. You authored a juvenile book, director, a juvenile story titled The Plot Against the King. That shows me everything I need to understand regarding how you view the presidency and how you view yourself. Not as a public worker, as a flatterer, a guy who pens fairy tales about his sponsor and labels it patriotism. She leaned back, adjusted her eyewear, the motion that implied, I am done, your turn now. At the nearby table, Kash Patel remained motionless. Dark clothing, no necktie, a remnant from his public defender years in Miami-Dade, where neckties were for prosecutors and defenders years, wore whatever got them through a grueling shift. In front of him, a lone folder, dark note tags the precise thickness of 5 evidence pieces and nothing else, not the calmness of a guy taking a hit, the quietness of a guy who had spent decades in courtrooms where the prosecutors were louder and heavily funded. And the sole advantage a public defender possessed was patience, the capacity to sit quietly while someone louder presented their argument and then stand up and destroy it with facts. He paused 3 seconds after Pelosi concluded. Then he opened the dark folder. Representative Pelosi. His tone was the FBI briefing tone the pitch agents utilize when outlining evidence to a chief before a raid. Brief statements, no fluff. Every word picked the way a marksman chooses a spot. Thank you for the biography. 7 chiefs, 37 years. Quite remarkable. He glanced at the binder. I have been chief for 5 months, but I've been investigating considerably longer. And within these 5 months, my agents have retrieved some fascinating material. He stared at her. Documents you assumed were ruined. He flipped to the initial page. Let me display exactly what the Bureau uncovered. Exhibit 1. Patel recited the title the way an evidence clerk announces an exhibit number, dull, bureaucratic. The spoken equivalent of marking a paper received. Bureau Forensic Monetary Analysis, cross-examination of Pelosi family market activity against the House legislative calendar, Time frame January 2019 until December 2024. He stared at the panel, never at Pelosi, at the lawmakers who possess subpoena authority, and would need to determine what to do with what appeared next. Our financial auditors spotted 47 specific transactions completed by the Pelosi family, mostly through Paul Pelosi's business financial leasing services, where the purchase or sale happened within 14 calendar days of a committee vote floor action or regulatory declaration directly impacting the involved security. He stopped 47 connected transactions within a 5-year span. He turned one sheet. Let me provide you the highlights. June 2021, Paul Pelosi buys between $1 million and $5 million regarding NVIDIA call options. Shortly afterward, the CHIPS and Science Act, a $280 billion microchip funding legislation, proceeds toward the official legislative voting schedule on the congressional floor. Representative Pelosi, as Speaker, managed the voting schedule. She determined when the legislation would be voted upon. Her spouse acquired the contracts before the vote. He proceeded, tone completely unchanged. July 2024, Paul Pelosi dumps 2,000 shares of Visa. 2 months afterward, September 2024, the Department of Justice brings an antitrust lawsuit against Visa for cornering the national debit card sector. The equity plummeted. The Pelosis had already departed 2 months before the litigation became public. He flipped another sheet. Apple, Alphabet, Microsoft, Amazon, CrowdStrike. Every transaction finalized within days of regulatory action panel sessions or government contract declarations that immediately impacted stock price. Not once and not twice, 47 times. He placed the paper down. The mathematical likelihood of 47 accidental timing overlaps during a 5-year window, according to our forensic financial team, equals 1 in 3.2 million. He stared at the panel. For perspective, the chances of getting hit by lightning during a single year remain 1 in 222,000. You are highly likelier to get hit by lightning twice than to execute 47 accidental stock trades that perfectly match with your partner's legislative calendar. And unlike lightning, these transactions always moved in the lucrative direction. He faced toward Pelosi. When challenged regarding these transactions, Representative Pelosi has repeatedly declared, "I do not own any equities. My spouse handles those choices. I never command him to buy or sell assets." That might be accurate, however, within the Bureau. When we probe financial crimes, we never merely examine who exactly executed the transaction. We investigate who possessed the intelligence and the official who managed the House voting schedule, who determined exactly when the CHIPS bill would finally face a vote, who attended highly classified meetings regarding technology and national defense, who clearly understood which corporations were about to secure $280 billion federal subsidies. That individual shared a dining table alongside the person executing the transactions. He halted. We possess zero need to demonstrate she phoned her spouse shouting, "Buy NVIDIA." We merely need to establish that the details migrated from one end of the dining table to the opposite. Within monetary law, that remains called a tipper-tippy dynamic. And 47 connections at 1 in 3.2 million chances represents what prosecutors label a sequence from 20 million in personal wealth when she achieved Speaker in 2007 to approximately 240 million currently. A 174,000 income, 240 million, that represents a 1,200% yield upon a federal paycheck. Warren Buffett managed 20% yearly across 60 years and remains deemed the finest investor in history. You achieved significantly more with substantially less transparency. Pelosi's posture stiffened. Not through arrogance, through defensiveness, the spinal reaction of a woman whose attorneys had instructed her before the session, "Sit up straight and speak nothing." Her mouth tightened, not obviously to the audience, but clearly to camera 2, which was positioned to capture the witness desk in profile. Her gaze shifted not toward Patel, not toward the panel, toward the legal desk, toward the lawyer from Williams and Connolly. The look endured 1 second. The expression asked, "Is this what we trained for?" The lawyer's expression communicated nothing back. Criminal defense lawyers are conditioned to maintain faces that reveal nothing. That remains the requirement. Exhibit 2, identical rhythm, identical dull presentation. Retrieved message metadata. Origin Congressional Sergeant at Arms Network backup. Window January 3rd until January 7th, 2021. The session room climate plummeted, not physically. The ventilation in Dirksen cannot react to testimony, yet the humans did. January 3rd until January 7th, everybody in the chamber understood what occurred on January 6th. Our cyber investigation squad retrieved metadata, not the messages directly, but the records revealing when messages were dispatched, collected, viewed, and erased from the profile of former Sergeant at Arms Paul Irving. Sir, since Irving was assigned to his role by the Speaker of the House, his hierarchy of leadership flowed through the Speaker's headquarters, he recited from the paper. 3 messages were transmitted from Sergeant at Arms Irving to the Speaker's Director of Staff between January 3rd and January 5th, 2021. Every single one featured the term guard inside the heading. All 3 were viewed. The metadata verifies red timestamps, and all 3 were scrubbed from Irving's profile on January 7th, 2021. He glanced upward. January 7th, the morning following the infiltration. 3 messages concerning the National Guard viewed before January 6th, erased following January 6th, never archived, never routed to any security analysis committee, never saved for any probe destroyed. He placed the sheet downward. Capitol Police Commander Stephen Sund has sworn that he demanded National Guard mobilization before January 6th. The Sergeant at Arms, your selection representative, rejected that petition. The official justification, according to various insiders' appearances, the visuals of National Guard soldiers near the Capitol were considered inappropriate. Patel stared toward Pelosi. And later on January 6th, when the facility was compromised and Commander Sund demanded the troops again, it required over an hour for authorization since the petition had to navigate up a hierarchy of authority that involved your headquarters. He stopped. And later on, video and tape captured by your child Alexandra for an HBO feature, you stated, and I recite, I assume accountability for not having them, simply prepared for more. You additionally asked why were the National Guard absent to begin with. He let the statements linger. 2 statements, both confessions, both recorded, both hidden. That recording survives. We realize it survives because Chairman Loudermilk secured it directly through HBO, never from your panel, never from the vaults through HBO. Because the panel you established to probe January 6th, the squad that questioned over 1,000 individuals, that conducted nationally broadcast sessions, that utilized $20 million of citizen funds, that recommended a former commander for indictment. That panel held this tape of you confessing accountability regarding the defense collapse, and they chose not to broadcast it, chose not to feature it inside their open summary, chose not to save it forever. You accepted accountability in private, yet rejected it in public. You formed a panel to fault somebody else regarding a defense collapse you confessed on your child's camera was yours. The panel buried the video, and the messages concerning the troops were erased the morning following the infiltration. He glanced at the panel. Inside the Bureau, we utilize a phrase regarding this sequence. Whenever a suspect provides a confession in one setting and rejects it in another, whenever they ruin correspondence and hide proof of their personal remarks, we label it awareness of culpability. It remains no judicial ruling. It signals investigative meaning. It sits on page 114 inside the Bureau Psychological Handbook. I understand because I reviewed it preceding this session. Pelosi's fingers shifted gradually, purposefully. They glided off the desktop into her lap beneath the desk rim, beneath the lenses. Whenever a testifier's palms vanish beneath the desk during a legislative session, it signifies one reality. The testifier has quit attempting to broadcast calmness and has started attempting to survive. Palms upon the desk communicate ultimate transparency. Palms in the lap broadcast, I am surviving. Her lawyer tilted toward her, whispering, 1 word, perhaps 2. Pelosi just shook no. 1 isolated quick twitch. The movement of a woman who had been warned, remained silent, and who for the initial time across 37 years was battling the urge to ignore her attorney. That impulse dominated every battle across 37 years. This instance, that impulse confronted the facts, and the facts proved heavier. She stayed silent. Exhibit 3, Patel flipped the document. Bureau Monetary Web Charting Target. Pelosi household economic relationships timeframe 2007 until currently. He stared at the panel. This element remains introductory. Our forensic auditors are currently charting the entire web, yet I can reveal what we have verified entirely. Paul Pelosi manages Financial Leasing Services, a San Francisco-situated investment fund and property holding business. The company's market behavior, which produces the family's main wealth, has overlapped during at minimum 3 instances alongside groups that acquired government funding through panels that Representative Pelosi led or dominated as speaker. He spoke cautiously, every syllable, selected the method an explosive specialist determines which cable to sever. Within those 3 scenarios, organizations that delivered PAC funds toward panels connected with the Pelosi campaign machine afterward obtained grants or beneficial legislative treatment. We are never claiming absolute bribery. We merely highlight a sequence that our financial auditors have marked for deeper analysis. He gazed toward Pelosi. You labeled me a partisan operative wearing a law enforcement disguise. Allow me to explain what a federal security expert performs, Representative. He tracks the currency. I have tracked currency across radical groups across the Orient. I tracked wealth across smuggling cartels across South Florida while I worked as a legal defender discovering how the opposing team prosecutes. I trailed funds across espionage agency finances upon the House Intelligence Panel. He rested. And currently I track capital throughout Washington. The avenues look different. The ghost corporations feature superior branding. The attorneys prove substantially pricier, however the sequence remains entirely identical. Wealth travels toward authority and authority shields the pipeline. Pelosi talked for the initial moment since her opening declaration. The initial remarks she spoke within 12 minutes. Her tone sounded forceful. Not the measured volume of a legislative address, the emotional volume of an individual whose quietness had been containing something explosive. Chief Director, are you charging me with a statement halted? Not because Patel interjected. Not because the leader intervened, since Pelosi recognized the term that approached rapidly, the expression building inside her airway, the noun that her mouth was designing the phrase that would finish the thought remained corruption. And speaking corruption, utilizing her personal tone upon the transcript through a microphone via C-SPAN, would drop the term inside her mouth, never Patel's mouth, hers. And the video would become Nancy Pelosi mentions corruption during FBI session, and the video would broadcast endlessly. She ceased mid-expression. The sound perished inside her neck like an automobile motor shutting off. Her lips shut, yet everybody inside the chamber recognized the outline of the term that never arrived. The spirit of corruption floated amidst the testimony desk in the administrator's seat, noticeable purely within the quietness where it rightfully belonged then. Patel never reacted, never recognized the abandoned phrase, never grinned. He merely flipped the document. Exhibit 4 surveillance video recording, Origin Salon, San Francisco, California, timestamp September 1st, 2020. He held no necessity elaborating. Everybody inside the chamber recognized the recording. Nancy Pelosi strolling across a San Francisco beauty parlor lacking a covering, breaking the municipality's pandemic quarantine mandates completely. She had openly endorsed directives that had shuttered every parlor across the metropolis, mandates that had ruined independent enterprises by the thousands. The video remains public information. It was viewed. What has remained hidden is what occurred to the lady who leaked it. Patel moved the proof document away. For the initial moment, his tone altered, not friendlier, not gentler, however targeted. He addressed directly toward the lenses currently targeting the viewer's relaxing home. Reaching the citizens who lacked awareness regarding what befell Erica Caius. Erica Caius managed Esalon, an independent company, her company. She constructed it across 12 years, began as one station inside a communal area, expanded it into a complete parlor featuring 6 professionals and a customer roster that required a decade to formulate. Once pandemic struck, she obeyed the regulations, shuttered her entryways, requested federal relief funds, paused, observed her finances empty, although her property owner demanded payment, executed whatever the administration commanded her toward. Later, upon September 1st, 2020, Representative Pelosi strolled inside Erica's parlor, lacking a covering within a municipality where every competing business remained shuttered through the quarantine mandates that Representative Pelosi had openly celebrated. Erica maintained a surveillance system. The device captured what it witnessed, and Erica finalized a choice that every citizen could comprehend. She published the recording. He stopped considering that choice regarding demonstrating the nation that the leader of the chamber completely ignored her personal regulations. Erica Cayuse acquired murder threats, untraceable messages toward her company, intimidation toward her relatives. She dropped customers who felt terrified of staying connected with her. Within 6 months, she shuttered operations forever. Within a year, she abandoned San Francisco, a 12-year enterprise ruined because she revealed the reality. And Representative Pelosi's reaction: "I was totally framed. 2 sentences. That remained the justification. Not I apologize, not I needed to wear a covering. Never I should have obeyed the exact regulations I ordered everybody else to respect. The excuse became the lady whose parlor I entered lacking a covering deliberately deceived me." He flipped a document, yet here remains what nobody published until today. Justice inspected pandemic exemption files concerning personal grooming enterprises within San Francisco across the time frame March 2020 until June 2021. 4 parlors, 4 inside the identical postal sector as eSalon, acquired local exemptions permitting them to function throughout the harshest period of the quarantine. Exemptions that Erica Cayuse never actually acquired, exemptions that Erica Cayuse never realized were available. He recited from the paper. Among the 4 parlors that secured exemptions, all 4 were possessed by citizens who had provided donations toward progressive organizations within San Francisco County throughout the previous 3 seasons. Donation totals spanned between $2,500 and $15,000. Erica Cayuse had provided 0 campaign donations. The parlor that revealed the reality was destroyed. The parlors that remained silent remained operational. The distinction separating active and shuttered was never obedience. It meant compensation. While I served as legal counsel inside Miami-Dade County, I defended citizens the bureaucracy had essentially condemned in its thoughts before the litigation commenced: narcotics peddlers, assassins, syndicate affiliates. I protected them since the 6th Amendment guarantees every citizen receives an attorney, and the 14th Amendment declares every individual acquires equal safety beneath the statutes. Every citizen, never every financier, never every buddy, never every individual who remains silent whenever the elite violate the mandates. Every citizen, he glared toward Pelosi. The issue has never been whether you secure a defense representative. You possess Williams and Connolly. You hold capital. You maintain alternatives. The concern remains whether the mandates you force upon everybody else govern you similarly. Erica Cayuse obeyed your mandates and surrendered her enterprise. You violated your mandates and received your hairstyling. Furthermore, the bureaucracy you command compensated the parlors that contributed and penalized the enterprise that exposed the reality upon the session chamber screens. The parlor video broadcasted not the entire segment. A 10-second portion strolling across the parlor uncovered the surveillance system's curved lens, capturing her from above the date mark, inside the margin displaying September 1st, 2020. Pelosi observed herself upon the display, her mouth squeezed into a streak, not the campaign grin, not the combat expression, not the blank stare of calculated quietness. A streak, the narrowest conceivable arrangement of mortal lips, the arrangement that indicates I am keeping my expression intact, utilizing the tendons of my jaw since everything else is attempting to crumble completely. Her gaze never fluttered for 8 seconds. Broadcasters would subsequently verify the length since somebody constantly calculates. Her pupils remained wide-locked upon the screen, viewing herself stroll across a parlor that no longer operated, managed by a lady who no longer resided within the metropolis, amid a plague that had shuttered every competing enterprise along the street. 8 seconds of avoiding blinking remains a lengthy span, sufficient duration for moisture to gather, not sentimental crying, biological crying, the variety the system generates whenever the eyelids decline to execute their function. The dampness collected near the edges of her pupils, and whether it represented biology or remorse, or the illumination inside Dirksen Chamber 226. It appeared on broadcast resembling the onset of weeping. She fluttered eventually, and the dampness vanished, and alongside it the final apparent proof of anything mimicking mortal emotion. Exhibit 5. Patel's tone reverted toward the proof registry rhythm, frigid bureaucratic, the tone of a guy reciting the final entry of a catalog before locking the proof vault. The ultimate piece, the element that counts greatest. He stared at the panel. After the January 6th special panel disbanded near the conclusion of the 117th legislature panel, employees were ordered to relocate every document toward the National Archives, routine protocol. Each panel performs this near the conclusion of a session. The documents transition into a permanent historical archival collection. He flipped the document. Bureau inspection of the relocation executed at the petition of Chairman Loudermilk's investigative subgroup discovered that the relocation proved deficient. 14 containers of tangible records and roughly 40 gigabytes of electronic data were entirely omitted during the National Archives transition. He let the figure linger. 14 crates, 40 gigabytes never censored, never restricted, never hidden regarding domestic defense vanished utterly, never present. Almost like somebody had determined that specific records from a 20 million or 2-year probe completely lacked needing eternal preservation. He gazed toward Pelosi. We retrieved a segment of those records via backup networks operated through the Congressional Information Management Department. The restored intelligence features internal employee notes, interrogation transcripts that were never published widely, and correspondence connecting the panel and the leader's headquarters concerning testifier picking and proof exhibition tactics. He secured the binder, moved it aside, folded his fingers. The material of those communications remains currently undergoing justice review. I cannot reveal details inside a public hearing, however, I can guarantee this. A panel established to examine the events surrounding January 6th clearly failed to preserve all of its personal evidence regarding January 6th. 14 crates, 40 gigabytes missing from the vaults, and the individual who founded that panel, who chose its representatives, who outlined its parameters, who dictated its budget, is positioned at this testimony desk. He stared at Pelosi. You burned $20 million examining January 6th, and after the examination concluded, 14 containers of evidence vanished. Within the Bureau, whenever evidence disappears following a probe, we refuse, calling it an archiving glitch. We designate it spoliation. He rested. Speaker Johnson educated the public regarding that term recently. I will apply it here. Pelosi remained frozen, never spoke, never blinked, never shifted her eyewear, never glanced toward her attorney, never glanced toward the panel, never performed any of those actions that Nancy Pelosi had performed across 37 years of hearings, legislative skirmishes, press conferences, and partisan combat. She remained motionless, the rigidity of a machine that had been functioning for 37 years and had unexpectedly, lacking warning, lacking ceremony, powered down. Not the quietness of a human deciding against speaking, the quietness of a device that had been disconnected. The energy indicator bulb, the bulb that had stayed illuminated since 1987 across 2 speakerships, 4 presidential tenures, 2 trials of plague, and a riot, had extinguished, and the audience could witness it, and the audience comprehended that whatever they were witnessing meant no hesitation. It represented a conclusion. Her lawyer tilted toward her, whispering. Pelosi chose not to shake her head entirely, never nodded, never reacted. The attorney leaned backward, and for the initial time throughout the session, for the initial time, perhaps throughout their career partnership, the attorney held zero further counsel to provide, and the client held zero further determination to ignore it. Patel stood up, reached inside the interior pouch of his suit, removed his bureau credentials, the leather wallet holding the star and photographic identification that every chief holds, the credentials that had been held by Mueller and Comey and Wray and McCabe, and every chief extending to J. Edgar Hoover. He presented the star upward, not theatrically, practically. The method an officer presents credentials toward an entryway preceding delivering a warrant. Representative Pelosi, you declared this star, Robert Mueller's star, James Comey's star, belongs to experts. You remain correct. This star symbolizes every agent who has continually held it. Every probe, every strike, every 300A. A search warrant delivered upon a freezing stoop. Every prosecution assembled brick by brick upon facts. Never rhetoric, never narrative, never broadcasting. Facts. He placed the star upon the desk. Delicately, the method you place down something that counts. You labeled me a partisan operative wearing a law enforcement disguise. Allow me to explain what this disguise has discovered across the 5 months I have worn it. He tallied upon his knuckles. 47 connected stock transactions alongside a 1 in 3.2 million chance of accident. 3 erased messages concerning the National Guard destroyed the morning following the infiltration. A familial monetary web that our forensic auditors remain actively charting a parlor proprietor who surrendered everything for revealing the reality. While 4 of her rivals who contributed toward your friends maintain their operations functioning, and 14 containers of evidence regarding a $20 million examination that nobody can locate. He stared at Pelosi. You labeled me a flatterer, declared I worship a monarch. I worship no monarch representative. I worship this star, and this star protects the Constitution. The exact Constitution you pledged to protect and afterward utilized 37 years, weaponizing as a cudgel against everybody except yourself. He waited 10 seconds. The session chamber counted them. The method session chambers perpetually measure quietness through heartbeats, never seconds. I am no Mueller. I am no Comey. I am no Wray. I represent the investigator you attempted preventing from investigating you during 2017. Whenever I advised the House Intelligence Panel and we exposed Bureau corruption during Crossfire Hurricane, you alongside your associates branded me a fringe fanatic. You attempted destroying the Nunes Memorandum. You attempted destroying the probe. You attempted destroying me. He grabbed the star, placed it securely into his pocket. I remained standing and likewise do the facts. He gazed toward Pelosi, one ultimate moment pupil to pupil. The space separating the twin testimony desks measured 4 feet, and those 4 feet held 37 years of authority, and 5 months of perseverance, and 5 items that were scheduled to be destroyed, yet survived. Rest peacefully. Representative, he settled down. The session chamber remained totally static. The lawmakers remained entirely static. The audience remained entirely static. The lawyer representing Williams and Connolly remained entirely static. And Nancy Pelosi, the most influential woman across American political history, the woman who had managed the House of Representatives like a commander, manages an operation. The lady whose tone had molded laws and ended professions and forged empires sat beside the testimony desk alongside her palms inside her lap and her mouth shut and her gaze forward, maintaining the stance of an individual who had spent 37 years dominating every chamber she accessed and had instantly accessed a chamber that somebody else dominated. The mallet drop session ended, and the noise of the mallet, a solitary thud distinct and permanent, echoed throughout Dirksen Chamber 226. The method evidence echoes throughout a prosecution, systematically, thoroughly, and lacking requesting permission. The video that became explosive remained not rest peacefully representative, although that became the second highest viewed political recording of 2025, trailing solely the Kennedy angling competition analogy. The video remained core, 3 characters. The opening of a phrase Pelosi failed finishing, the phantom syllable 12 seconds of tape. Patel announcing item 3. Pelosi exploding, saying, "Sir Director, are you charging me with?" And instantly the pause, the mid-utterance death, the lips shutting over corruption like a snare snapping around a thumb. 39 million views within 48 hours. Not simply because it appeared dramatic, because it appeared automatic. Pelosi had entirely rejected planning to mention corruption. The noun had emerged from somewhere beneath preparation, beneath studying, beneath the 37 years of narrative control from the location where the biology understands what the intellect refuses admitting. And her lips had begun shaping it before her consciousness caught up. The core slipped. The ruption remained blocked. And 39 million viewers observed a lady's instinct expose her across live broadcasting. A physical behavior specialist upon CNN invited to evaluate the video stated, "The abandoned phrase proves more revealing than any finished phrase she has ever muttered." Whenever an individual starts a phrase automatically and blocks it purposely, it signals the rational intellect remains catching up toward what the instinctive intellect constantly understands. She understands the noun fits. She simply refuses affording to utter it. Fox broadcasted the video 31 times during 24 hours. MSNBC broadcasted it 4 times every instance, featuring a group attempting to justify why it failed, signaling what it clearly signaled. The groups remained unpersuasive. The syllable remained definitive. 1 in 3.2 million became a phenomenon, not the partisan variety, the statistical variety. Financial Twitter converted it into a standard of calculation. Whenever a lawmaker executed a questionably scheduled transaction, the threads flooded, featuring what remained the probabilities. 1 in 3.2 million. A technology startup created a browser plugin that highlighted congressional equity transactions inside 14 days of connected legislation. They titled it the Pelosi Alarm. It generated 2 million installations during its premiere month. The plugin's graphic remained a tiny lightning strike, a nod toward Patel's highly likelier to get hit by lightning twice analogy. Inside 3 months, the plugin had highlighted 23 transactions connected to 11 representatives of Congress, spanning both factions. The weapon Patel had targeted toward Pelosi remained currently targeted toward everybody. And everybody felt anxious. The Erica Cayos portion produced something the remaining elements lacked: compassion funding. Within 72 hours, a GoFundMe regarding Cayos's legal war chest generated $890,000, exceeding the value of the enterprise she had sacrificed. The remarks remained consistent. You revealed the reality. The bureaucracy penalized you. We remember. Traditional media published profiles. A production team from Daily Wire publicized a brief feature. And the inquiry that maintained surfacing inside threads, inside posts, inside columns remained Patel's inquiry, highlighted yet unanswered. Why exactly did the parlors that contributed acquire exemptions, while the parlor that revealed the reality acquired closure? 14 containers became the ultimate puzzle. Not since crates appear dramatic, crates seldom appear. Since the disappearance of crates appears dramatic. A $20 million examination produces thousands of files. Those files occupied numerous crates, and 14 among those crates, 40 gigabytes of electronic data failed, resting where the statute dictates they must exist. Nobody had justified why. Nobody had justified how. And the Justice Department was currently interrogating 6 prior panel employees via subpoena, attempting figuring out. SEC initiated a rigorous analysis surrounding financial leasing services. Avoiding Paul Pelosi, personally, the marital loophole remained technically intact, yet the company's trading framework, intelligence pipelines, and decision-making methodology. The 1 in 3.2 million probability became the focal point of the SEC mandate. 3 Republican lawmakers and 1 independent endorsed a document labeling the probability a statistical anomaly that requires formal prosecution, ignoring casual analysis. The SEC delegated the investigation toward its Market Enforcement Division, the identical division that had pursued Martha Stewart. The delegation remained a message. Martha Stewart entered prison regarding falsifying a $45,000 equity transaction. The Pelosi family's connected transactions measured into the tens of millions. Senator Rick Scott's GAO review petition, submitted August 2025, actual upon the public registry, became formalized toward a thorough analysis of Pelosi family market behavior spanning her complete 37-year congressional tenure. Not merely the 47 transactions, Patel exposed every transaction, every panel assignment, every article of legislation that impacted a corporation the Pelosi's possessed shares inside. The parameters remained the widest monetary review ever performed upon a current or past representative of Congress. Pelosi's legal team submitted a petition to restrict the parameters. The GAO rejected it. The rejection contained 2 sentences. The parameters reflect the span of the target's tenure. 37 years of tenure necessitates 37 years of analysis. Justice delivered subpoenas towards 6 past January 6th special panel employees concerning the 14 missing containers. Past leader Benny Thompson's staff hired Williams and Connolly, the identical firm advising Pelosi, which generated an immediate conflict of interest dilemma that neither party desired answering openly. Thompson issued a single-sentence declaration: "I remain convinced that all documents were correctly managed." The Bureau's registry, declaring 14 containers and 40 gigabytes, disagreed. Past Vice Chair Liz Cheney released her personal declaration: "I stand behind the panel's efforts and its record-keeping." She completely failed, justifying the void. Two past panel employees communicating via lawyers signaled readiness toward cooperating. Four ignored responding. Erica Cayuse initiated a civil litigation targeting the municipality and county of San Francisco within the northern jurisdiction of California. The document referenced the Justice inspection revealing biased application of COVID-19 quarantine directives favoring donor parlors receiving operational exemptions. Cayuse failed. The litigation claimed infringement of the equal protection standard of the 14th Amendment First Amendment punishment. The video publication represented shielded expression and purposeful infliction of emotional trauma. Compensation demanded $2.4 million, the projected valuation of her 12-year enterprise, moving expenses, forfeited revenue, and verified psychological trauma. A traditional legal charity accepted the litigation pro bono. The municipality of San Francisco's initial reply submitted by the municipal lawyer contained 7 words. The municipality denies all claims of malpractice. 7 words attempting answering a 12-year enterprise ruined. The imbalance remained the purpose. The House Ethics Panel acquired a rigorous mandate endorsed by 4 Republicans and 1 independent, demanding investigation concerning whether the leader's staff ordered or enabled the extraction of January 6th panel files during the National Archives transition. The mandate specifically highlighted A, the 3 erased SAA messages featuring GUARD inside the heading; B, the 14 absent containers; C, the hidden HBO video; and D, the history of evidence handling that Patel had characterized resembling awareness of culpability. Pelosi's representative labeled the mandate a politically driven fishing hunt structured toward distracting from the genuine dangers confronting our republic. Patel's department answered utilizing 4 words. "We prefer investigation, absolutely." The SEC's Market Enforcement Division demanded and acquired Paul Pelosi's complete transaction files, spanning his brokerage, featuring request timestamps, correspondence logs, linking the brokerage and the customer, and IP locations where transactions were triggered. The demand remained routine regarding insider trading prosecutions. However, its enforcement toward a past leader's spouse proved groundbreaking. Paul Pelosi's lawyer labeled the demand an overstep fueled by partisan theater. The SEC's reply referenced 1 in 3. $2 million, and highlighted that statistical unlikelihood of this scale represents adequate justification regarding total forensic audit utilizing Section 10B of the Securities Exchange Regulation. Legal experts highlighted that Section 10B represents the exact regulation utilized toward convicting Bernie Madoff. Pelosi's 2026 re-election campaign, she would turn 86 years old, confronted its initial legitimate primary rival during 2 decades. The rival, a 38-year-old San Francisco municipal supervisor titled David Chen, who initiated featuring a campaign motto that required 0 translation 14 boxes. Inside a week, the effort had generated $1.2 million through tiny dollar contributions. A sarcastic figure considering that Waller, $2 million, remained similarly the sum Karen Waters had secured regarding shipping brochures during the Kennedy hearing. The web highlighted the overlap. Both generated $1.2 million. One trending post stated, one regarding a campaign, the other regarding postage management. Chen's campaign portal displayed a lone page accounting timer toward the moment the justice subpoena replies became required from past J6 panel employees. 0 legislative stances, 0 sponsorships, merely a timer. The timer remained the campaign, and the timer remained running. DNC completely failed, publicly dropping endorsement regarding Pelosi that would appear incredibly visible, incredibly final, incredibly similar toward a confession. Instead, the DCC secretly shifted $400,000 from party accounts exiting California's 11th District Pelosi's toward 3 vulnerable battleground regions. The shift remained hidden inside a seasonal document that nobody remained expected reviewing. A journalist from Politico reviewed it, the banner Democrats secretly defunding Pelosi's region. Pelosi's staff labeled the shift standard resource rotation. The three battleground regions that secured the funds labeled it appreciated the speaking tour, Pelosi's post-speakership revenue stream, the $100,000 per appearance tour that had rendered her a staple during corporate seminars and university graduations dwindled toward almost zero. Not because associations quit phoning, since associations' legal divisions began examining the SEC probe and recommending against involvement. Brand hazard, the twin words that destroy more professions than convictions. 3 institutions dropped Pelosi regarding commencement orator. 2 corporate panels she advised upon secretly erased her off their portals. The erasure failed being declared. The portals simply vanished, resembling 14 containers off an archive. Williams and Connolly invoiced $2.1 million across the initial 4 months of legal shielding. CC reply, justice subpoena fulfillment, GAO review alignment, ethics panel mandate reply, and Kiu's litigation tracking $2.1 million regarding attorney bills from a lady valued $200 to $40 million. The bills proved affordable. What proved unmanageable meant that the bills existed. Nancy Pelosi had never required a criminal defense lawyer previously across 37 years, and currently she possessed a $2.1 million invoice alongside the firm that defends individuals who anticipate getting indicted. The Williams and Connolly invoice became the indicator. Inside Washington, you never retain Williams and Connolly regarding parking violations. You retain them whenever the shredder entirely failed functioning. You just witnessed the FBI chief present 5 recovered evidence pieces toward the most influential woman across American political history. Documents she assumed were ruined. Messages she assumed were erased. Video she assumed was hidden. Files she assumed were vanished. They completely refused vanishing. They became recovered. Yet here remains what they desperately forbid you knowing. The prosecution completely refuses ending. It remains launching. 1. The SEC remains examining 47 equity transactions connected alongside legislative action. 1 in 3.2 million odds of accident. The transactions remain public. The prosecution remains currently formal. Senator Rick Scott's GAO review spans her complete tenure, every transaction, every panel, every legislation. 2 14 containers of J6 panel files were completely improperly archived. The Bureau retrieved some utilizing backup networks. The Justice Department has subpoenaed 6 past staff employees. Nobody has justified where the containers traveled or whoever extracted them. 3. Erica Kius, the parlor proprietor who revealed America the reality regarding COVID hypocrisy, surrendered her enterprise-acquired murder threats and fled her municipality. She has never secured an apology. She has never secured restitution. Justice discovered that 4 of her rivals, all progressive financiers, acquired pandemic exemptions that she lacked. She has launched a litigation. The litigation remains ongoing. 3 litigations, all active, all advancing, all requiring one component: citizens who decline to forget. Nancy Pelosi has endured 37 years inside Washington because evidence vanishes. That remains how Washington functions. Files travel into shredders, shredders travel toward incinerators, and the embers completely refuse testifying. Yet this instance, the guy commanding the Bureau remains the guy she attempted ruining during 2017. The guy she labeled a fringe fanatic, the guy whose probe she attempted burying. He remains entirely standing, and likewise do the facts. Subscribe. Share this alongside one citizen who still considers congressional equity trading remains coincidence, and question them what 1 in 3.2 million signifies. Drop burn bag inside the threads if you consider 14 missing containers from a $20 million examination warrant a justification. And strike that alert icon, because whenever the Justice Department finishes analyzing those records, you will desire knowing what rests inside. The shredder remains unlocked. The embers remain speaking.